So generally speaking, tariffs are not a tool that's been used that much recently, but sometimes they do make a comeback. So we want to make sure we understand them well. This is going to be a two-part series, and where the first part we talk about the two main goals of tax revenue, tariff revenue, and protectionist. And the second video is going to be look at using tariffs to apply pressure and to try to fix some trade imbalances. Let's dive in. So in this first video here, I'm going to look at the two main reasons why tariffs exist. And one of them is to generate tariff revenue, and one of them is to protect domestic industries. And both of them kind of conflict one another, because if you are generating tariff revenue, it's because you keep importing goods, and therefore you're not promoting local businesses to thrive. And if, on the other hand, if you no longer buy imported goods and you produce much more domestically, well, then in that situation, you have a situation where there is no extra revenue that's being collected. So the first thing that we have to understand to determine what's going to be the outcome of a tariff is to understand how desperate people are to getting these goods. How many substitutes are actually available? So if there is no substitutes available and consumers within that country still want to buy those imported goods, well, then you're going to generate tax revenue. If, on the other hand, those goods are also produced domestically, albeit at a slightly higher price, well, then you can start favoring those domestically produced equivalent goods and buying less of the imported good. And in that sense, you can start promoting new jobs being created or more expansion of jobs in certain industries. So we have to understand in which of these two categories things fall. So once a tariff is introduced, do consumers keep buying the good or not? If they keep buying the good, then we have to ask ourselves, well, who's going to pay for this tariff? Well, with any tax that's being introduced, we have an increased cost, a disconnect between the price paid and the price received by the supplier, the producer. And in that situation, you can have a greater tax burden either borne by the producer or the consumer. And once again, that depends on options. When the consumer has many options available, does not depend on the specific product, they will have more choices, they have more power, and therefore it's the producer that's going to take a hit if that producer has no other options. If, on the other hand, the producer has tons of options, they can close shop and do something else, but the consumer really needs this product, then you have a situation where the consumer really needs it, therefore the consumer will face this burden. This kind of idea of taxation and burden is seen extensively in microeconomics in the taxation chapter, but it also reflects what you learn from elasticity in terms of how people react to changes in price. Either the producer takes a hit or the consumer. How does this actually work out? So imagine a product selling for $10 and there's a 25% tariff that's introduced. Well, if the consumer really needs this product, the producer knows that the consumer really needs this product, they can keep buying it, and essentially that whole increase in cost is passed on to the consumer. So now the consumer pays $12.50 for the same product as before. This leads to higher costs. Higher costs to consumers leads to inflation. On the other hand, if the consumer does not really need the product, and therefore if the producer lets the price increase by a substantial amount, the consumer no longer buys it. So in that situation there, you might have the most extreme case, which is the producer will say, we're going to sell this product now for $8. So $8 plus the 25% is $10, the same price as before. So now the consumer is not affected, but the producer receives much less money. So the producer gets hurt in that situation. So If it's something that's passed on to the consumer, it's going to hurt the consumers of the country that imposes this tariff. And if, on the other hand, it hurts the producer, it depends if this is a domestic company that gets hurt the most by this, or if it's the person exporting it. It all depends. It could be a mixture of the two. So if you keep buying the product, it depends on whether this product hurts more the consumer or the producer, but definitely it's typically a mix of the two. Consumers will pay more. So 25% increase in tariffs will definitely lead to some increase in price to the consumer, whether it's 5, 10, 20, 25%, all depends on this kind of relationship. If, on the other hand, this product that's selling for $10 and now would be, let's say, anywhere between $10 and $12.50, there is a domestically produced equivalent, well, in that situation there, you can have some of these products no longer imported and produced domestically, which then is good for protectionist reasons. You are promoting domestic industries to producing more of a good that they used to be producing, or new industries to set up shop in your country to produce and sell those goods to your domestic market. In both cases, you can argue that this creates jobs. We'll see the pitfall of that later on, but it can lead to more jobs being created. And but if jobs are being created and those industries are relocating to your country, well, then you don't have the tariff revenue. And in any case, what you have to expect is that consumers are going to pay more. It's completely unreasonable to assume that a higher cost, a tariff being introduced, will not hurt the consumer within that country. It doesn't make any sense, because if you're producing it domestically now, there's a reason why it wasn't produced domestically at first. It's because it was cheaper to buy from the other country. So yes, you might be introducing such a high cost that now it becomes cheaper to produce it locally, but the likelihood that that local price is the same as what you used to import at before is unlikely, because otherwise you would have produced locally from the start. So consumers definitely need to expect an increase in costs. And there's other kind of issues with tariffs, which comes to the response of countries to these tariffs. So if you impose tariffs on another country, it is unwise to think that this other country will just take the hit and not do anything about it. Okay? As soon as one country imposes tariffs on the other one for no apparent reason other than generate revenue or to protect their local industries, the other country will pretty much do the same thing. They're just going to use countermeasures and just do the same kind of thing. So yes, you might be getting some of the products that used to be made in another country to be produced locally, but all of a sudden, some of your products that you're making locally to be sent to other countries are now suffering. So you created new jobs at the expense of jobs that you already had, because those kind of relationships and what I just explained for the other scenario also applies. So you'll have some of these countries, some of these businesses within the country that will either take a hit to keep exporting, or will have to shut down entirely because the other country is no longer going to import from that. So you're kind of helping something out, but you're hurting in another scenario. And when you think about this, going from free trade to going to high tariffs and two countries producing their own goods is not good for society. Because if you think about the gains from trade, and this has been covered in other videos, with the gains from trade, we're kind of going from a situation where people are self-sufficient, or countries are self-sufficient, not trading with other countries, going to specialize in trading. And the reason why that specialized in trade exists is because with self-sufficiency, we could only produce up to a certain amount of all of the goods. But when we specialize in trade, we can produce and then consume a greater amount of all the goods than before. Just think about going back to a situation where you are producing your own food, your own clothing, your own vehicle, your own everything. it's going to become very inefficient. It's much better if everyone kind of chooses their own path, their own goal, and then everyone kind of specializes in something and trades with other people. That way we have more goods produced and we have more consumption, which is better for society. And all in all, tariffs are going to lead to counter tariffs. And although you could argue for tariff revenue at first and protectionist reasons, you're going to protect certain industries, you're going to attract some people back, but you're going to hurt other industries. So that doesn't really work out. And in terms of revenues, yes, you can generate some revenues, but the other country who's imposing countermeasures is generating revenues on some of your industries that you could have just taxed from the get-go and get some of that money. At the end of the day, you're leading to an isolationist path where every country is doing their own thing, and you have a situation where everyone gets less goods. So that's the major idea from all of this. The things that we have to consider more, though, is the impact of doing such a thing on relationships, diplomatic relationships, and how this other country is going to keep wanting to trade with you. The problem with that is as soon as you start going that path of protectionist policies, a country that sees that you don't want to trade with them anymore will start seeking other partners, and rightly so. And as that happens, you're going to have the rest of the world that's going to start trading amongst each other, and they're going to keep on enjoying the gains from trade. And you're going to have this other country who's just imposing large trade measures on everyone, and people will no longer want to deal with this market. So keep that in mind. There's some potential gains, yes, but the gains that look the best is when you disregard reality. If you could just impose tariffs and not have anything else happen, yes, revenue or protectionist policies, good. But the countermeasures and everything else that follows suit shows how bad this path is. And this is why most countries have never proposed this over the years. It just takes one person to believe in it to bring it back to light, but it's not the right way to do it. For the next video, we're going to look at the other reasons why you could impose tariffs. It could be more short-lived, it could have another purpose, but all in all, there's pitfalls to that as well. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real-life examples. Have a good day.